Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, these guys are from a state that hasn't been covered all that much on the channel, but one that I understand has a very, very good beer scene. I've just not come across too much stuff from this place, but this brewery is another relatively new addition to the local beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years, in particular for their New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and also for their modern, juicy, fruity, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. But recently here in Hong Kong, a number of their beers started to appear. One of the importers brought them in, and this is one of the ones that really just kind of caught my eye for a number of reasons. But it's a style that I very much enjoy, one that is growing in popularity at the moment, and I have to say that I'm just very, very curious about this one. So needless to say, I'm really looking forward to trying this one. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. And it's always cool to introduce new American breweries here on Rampant Lion Reviews as well. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to the state of Ohio in the American Midwest. I think we can call that the Midwest at least. We're going to go to a little place called Newark, which is out to the east of Columbus, the state capital if I'm not mistaken. And that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer from Dankhouse Brewing Company. So this particular beer comes from their Stay Puft series, which is a series of kind of smoothie, fruity, whatever you want to call them, sour beers. So it's the Stay Puft Grape Cherry. It comes in at 6% ABV. And yeah, it's a modern, smoothie, Nordic, whatever you're going to call it, sour beer with grapes and cherries into it. So yeah, I love my grape sours. I had some really nice ones from Japan recently, actually. But one thing that caught my eye about this beer as well is that I haven't seen this combination of fruits together, I think, ever, when it comes to reviewing beers on the channel. And I haven't seen all that many smoothie sours with cherries in them either. So yeah, I think this one is quite interesting on multiple counts. And I also really like the artwork on this one too. But this is another beer that I picked up from Angry Beer in Mongkok in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, but I did see a number of the other places across the territory have some of their hazy IPAs, so I need to see about picking up one of those and having a go at that in a future review. But yeah, the sour beers are the ones that I thought would be most interesting to start with. But yeah, let's crack on with this one and see how we get on. The Stay Puft Grape Cherry 6% Smoothie Sour from Dankhouse Brewing Company in Newark, Ohio in the US. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future from Dankhouse Brewing Company. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and that is being added to quite regularly at the moment because we're getting some really random American stuff here in Hong Kong, which is great to see. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Dankhouse Brewing Company then. So, Dankhouse Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Newark, Ohio, which is out to the east of the state capital, Columbus, and the company was founded back in 2017 by Josh and Heather Lange. So both of these guys are Newark locals, and Josh worked in construction while Heather was an elementary school teacher, but the two apparently knew each other in high school, but they weren't, close friends or anything like that. But they apparently started dating in Phoenix in Arizona, where Heather had been studying and was teaching at the time, and this came about after Josh was sent there on a work trip, but he looked her up and things just happened. But later they moved back home to be closer to their families. But apparently they initially had the plan to open up a carry-out craft beer shop, and they sorted out all the licenses and the other paperworks and things like this, and they were just waiting on the lease. But apparently the anchor store of the centre in which their place was to be based suddenly just pulled the plug and squashed the whole project. But this setback apparently was what triggered them to start looking into learning about how to brew beer beer, and they started home brewing in about 2015 in their garage. But Josh quit his job to focus on building up the company and the renovation of the site, which was quite time consuming incidentally. They put a lot of time into this, but the brewery would eventually open its doors in November of 2017. It's based on an 8.5 acre site, and they've got an indoor area for kids to play, as well as a lot of space outside for games like beer pong and bocce and other stuff like this. But the brewery itself started off with a 2.5 US barrel kit, which is about 320 litres. For those of you who are not familiar with the Freedom Unit scale, as I like to call it, we always make fun of American measurements on the channel because for me they just don't make sense. But they had 3 5 US barrel fermenters as well, which are 550 litres. But this infrastructure has since been upgraded quite a little bit. They've got a 10 BBL system now, which is about 1600 litres per brew, and they've got various other things that have been added into the brewery over the last little while as well. But the brewery's built a strong reputation over the last few years. That was built quite quickly, and they've become particularly well known for their fruited sours and their hazy IPAs as well. But as of May 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced 320 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And yeah, they are one of the Ohio breweries who are really kind of starting to get out there now. So yeah, as I say, I've known that Ohio beer is pretty good for quite a while, but I think other than Hoppin' Frog, their beers are quite, Ohio beers are quite hard to come across in Europe actually. So yeah, to come out here to Hong Kong and find something from Ohio is quite nice. And if you are watching from the state of Ohio, do let me know some of the other breweries that I should keep an eye out for. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Dankhouse Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Reet Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at this beer itself. So like I mentioned to you, this beer is part of a series of beers they do called Stay Puft. I'm not sure if they're meant to be pastry sours with a name like that, but yeah, as you say, this is the Stay Puft Grape Cherry 6% smoothie sour. This one, black top on the can. I have to say I do like the artwork on this one, as you say. But you can see on the side here, brewed and canned at Dankhouse Brewing Company, Newark, Ohio. Tells you a little bit, Stay Puft and Dank You. I do like that. But yeah, I have to say, this is quite nice artwork on this one. Yeah, I think, I'm wondering if by the artwork on this, it is going to be mainly grape with just a little bit of cherry in it. It kind of gives that impression from the artwork there. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. A 6% smoothie sour, one of my first beers from Ohio in what feels like a good little while. Oh, and it's got a little bit excited as I open it up, just a wee bit of bubble trying to escape from this one, but yeah, we should be okay. Oh, not quite as hazy and sort of smoothie as I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's going to be more of a kettle sour rather than a smoothie sour, but we'll just need to see. So that's about 80% of the beer out and into the glass at the moment. So before the head disappears, we'll say that the beer is poured with about a half finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head there. Yeah, it looks really nice, this one. That is going to fade away to just be a very thin foamy layer though and leave a ring around the edge of the glass, but you can see the colour of this beer is really nice. It's kind of like a burgundy maroon, or as I would say, it's a Heart of Midlothian football jersey colour, this one. But yeah, that looks really nice. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, when it comes to modern smoothie sours and thinking Berliner Weisses, Goses, whatever you like, the colour of the fruits that you put into these things does play most of the part. So yeah, the colour of this beer is not surprising considering that you've got grapes and cherries in this one, probably purple grapes in this incidentally. But yeah, it looks really nice, this one. I was expecting a little bit more. It looks a little bit more like a kind of Berliner Weisse Gose rather than being being a smoothie sour. I know my reference point for smoothie sours are a number of Swedish breweries, and of course we've got One Drop from Australia here in Hong Kong. at the moment as well. So this actually does look a little bit more like some of the Goses and Berliner Weisses of times gone by, rather than some of the more, you know, hazy, creamy Nordic things that I've had in recent times. But I'm sure it'll still be good in any case. If we shine the light through this beer, you can see there is a little bit. It is a little bit opaque, but certainly not as opaque as you're going to get from the Nordic smoothie sours, or indeed One Drop in Australia. So yeah, it looks the part, this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But all in all, it looks really nice, this one. You've got a nice little foamy layer, foamy ring just around the edge of the glass there, and you can see little bits of sediment floating around in this one, which is always going to be the case with some of these kind of modern smoothie sour beers. But yeah, appearance wise, it's pretty much what you would expect from the style. So let's have a wee look at the aroma then, and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. And as I've said many a time on the channel, a lot of these kind of smoothie sours and things like this, they're quite straightforward in terms of their flavour and aroma profile, but if they're done right, they're very, very good. So let's have a wee look at this and see how we go. Oh yeah, it's quite interesting, this one. It's actually almost pastry sour-like in the base, but then a little bit more Berliner Weisse and kind of creamy above that. So yeah, the way everything goes together, and this is pretty damn nice actually. Yeah, this is going to be good. Pretty sure this is going to be good. But yeah, like I said, the aroma profile of this one is pretty straightforward, but it is just really nice and quite enjoyable actually. So yeah, where do we start with that? Lovely. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, it's almost a little bit like a kind of ice cream wafer cone type thing, to be honest with you. So yeah, you've got this sort of ice cream wafery cone in the background, but a little bit of like fresh white bready bread crust as well, some, you know, Jacob's cream cracker. I'm not sure how good of a descriptor that is for Americans watching this video, but yeah, like ice cream wafer cone, Jacob's cream cracker, you know, white bready bread crust in there. Definitely some fluffy white bread as well. I mean, the aroma of this beer makes me think Berliner Weisse rather than anything else. So yeah, fluffy white bread in there. There is a little bit of vanilla coming out of this too. I get quite a lot of, you know, sweet vanilla in the base, especially when you sugar the thing up. So yeah, sweet vanilla in this one. Jacob's cream cracker. And then yeah, lots of kind of fluffy white bread in there. You can smell the wheat in this one. I think there is a little bit of wheat in this, and that's kind of densifying out the beer, but very, very smooth wheat, I would add. And like I've said, American wheat for me is, yeah, American wheat is just that little bit thicker and smoother, I think, than European wheat. European wheat has a little bit more bitiness to it in comparison. You know, different salt, different, you know, water profiles, different soil profiles, and even the genetics of the plant are a little bit different. So yeah, American wheat for me has always been a little bit more smooth and dense, I would say. So yeah, very smooth wheaty notes coming out of this one. I think there's a little bit of oat in this as well, because you can smell a bit of that kind of almost porridgey kind of character. And again, European oats are a bit more creamy for me. American oats are a little bit drier and a bit more porridgey. So there's a little bit of this kind of porridgey, oaty character coming out of this beer. I don't find this one has too much of the kind of yogurty quality that you quite often get in European smoothie sours. There's a little bit of it going on, and that kind of mixes in with the vanilla qualities that the beer has. But all in all, it's really quite interesting. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together is quite nice. On top of that, there's a little touch of like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy kind of biscuit coming out of this one. So yeah, yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. The malty backbone in this one's quite interesting. It really does strike me as being more kind of Berliner Weisse like than anything else. You know, but then the definition of a smoothie sour in America might be a wee bit different from the European definition actually. So yeah, this is interesting for sure, and I did notice that with some of the sour beers I tried in the States back in summer 2023 that they had. They were quite different, in fact. So yeah, all in all, really, really interesting multi-backbone to this one. So yeah, one of the things we need to talk about when it comes to these modern sour beers as well is the hoppy side of things. So for me, I think this beer could have a little bit of hoppy character in it. But one of the great debates when it comes to modern sour beers is whether you should use hops in them or not. If you go back to the days of the Huises, the Lambics, and the Flanders Reds, these old school Belgian sour beers, what they used to do with those was they added older hops into them that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency. But yeah, the reason behind this was that they didn't want the hoppy bitterness to detract from the sourness of the beer. So yeah, that is something to think about. But in terms of the the modern sour beers, a lot of breweries say that when you're adding fruits into beers and adjuncts, it's going to suppress the green component anyway, which is right. But a number of breweries still add the hops in just to give you that little bit more complexity of flavour. But just going from the aroma of this one, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of hop in here, because you still have a little touch of that green component there, and it doesn't smell like it's placebo in this case. So yeah, for me, there's a little bit of earthy herbal character and mainly a little bit of grassiness, but yeah, there's a hell of a lot of fruity character just pushing against that. I think the grapes, I think what I said in terms of the metaphor of the artwork on this one with the grapes being dominant, I think that probably is the case in this one, because cherries I think give you a little bit more kind of sharpness and sourness, whereas grapes are going to give you more of an oily juiciness in sour beers. At least that's my previous experience. But yeah, the character that comes out of this one, it seems more oily, juicy and grapey, and then yeah, you've got that little bit of sharper, there's a little touch of sharper cherry in there as well. But all in all, it's quite a juicy, soft and smooth sour beer, this one. But like I say, it's not quite as thick and creamy and yogurty as a number of the European ones that I've come across before. So yeah, all in all, aroma wise, this is quite interesting, but it really does come across as a wee bit more kind of kettle sour or Berliner Weisse like, rather than anything else. So yeah, I've enjoyed the aroma of this one though. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into the beer. But I think it is about time that we try this one. But just before we do, you can see when I poured the last little bit of it out there was a wee bit of sediment. It looks like, it actually looks a little bit like grape skins or something like that. That kind of went down to the bottom of the glass there, which was quite interesting. But yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy that aroma, but I think we should get stuck into this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Stay Puft Grape Cherry, a 6% smoothie, fruited, whatever we're going to call it, sour beer from Dankhouse Brewing Company in Newark, Ohio, over in the US. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's nice. I really like the flavour of this one, but definitely lighter than a number of the other kind of fruited sour beers that I've had in recent times. But that's good. This is really nice, actually. Yeah. I think it's definitely fair to say I like this one. I absolutely do. But the sort of mouthfeel that's coming out of this one is, it really is more like some of the Berliner Weisses that were the fruity Berliner Weisses that were appearing in Europe a couple of years ago. It's not so much, it's a mix of like kettle sour almost. It's got a bit of a kettle sour mouthfeel to it, but that kind of Berliner Weisse backbone. So yeah, the way all of that goes together, I love this beer. This is very good quality. I'm just trying to place it stylistically, which, you know, that's not the most important thing when it comes to beer. You should always ask yourself first and foremost, is it a good beer? The answer in this case is definitely yes. But yeah, this one for me is just quite interesting from that perspective. It really reminds me of a lot of the Berliner Weisses that I tried from European breweries maybe a couple of years ago. So yeah, I think the smoothie sour thing is maybe something that's a wee bit more further ahead in Europe actually. But yeah, all in all, I think the way everything goes together in this one is lovely, and this is a good beer, a little bit more drinkable. And the other thing you do have to consider in America as well is that it's a little bit of a more, you know, it's a little bit of a hotter climate than Europe is, generally speaking. So probably they prefer this kind of slightly lighter mouthfeel rather than the beer being really creamy and really yogurty and stuff like that. But yeah, if this is any indicator of how Dankhouse's sour beers are, then probably a lot of them are very, very good. But yeah, let's take the beer in hand then and kind of break the flavour down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. But this is bloody good actually. I love grape sours, and this is very, very nice. But when I think about it, maybe the lightness of the mouthfeel in this one is due to the fact that it's a grape sour. I haven't had too many like very creamy grape sours actually. But yeah, that is really very nice in this one for sure. Yeah, what I would say about this beer, generally speaking, is that the grapes are giving you a lot of the juiciness, and the cherry is just giving you that little bit of sharpness and tartness into the aftertaste. But yeah, let's break the beer down and describe the flavour for you a wee more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you have that lovely soft white bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your tongue, there's a wee bit of a kind of woody character in there. But yeah, generally speaking, within that base layer, it has a little bit of this almost like ice cream wafer cone type flavour to it. And then yeah, above that you've got this white bready character which has, it's almost like a vanilla sponge cake actually, come to think of it. There's a lot of that in this one. So yeah, kind of vanilla sponge cake for me. Yeah, that's definitely the base layer of this beer. I would stick with that. Yeah, vanilla sponge for sure. On the above that kind of white bready vanilla spongy type layer, you have above that you've got a little bit, I'd be tempted to say actually under the vanilla sponge and between the kind of wafery layer, there's like a slight layer of a sweet brown bread and that vanilla sponge type quality out of it. But then yeah, you can feel there's a wee bit of a more dense wheaty character coming out of this one, and the wheat is actually very, very smooth in this beer. Like I said, American wheat for me is a bit smoother than its, you know, than its drier American counterpart, that's for sure. So yeah, wee bit of that going on in this one, like lovely kind of smooth wheaty character, and above that I think there's a wee touch of oatiness going on. But this, as I say, this is not a very oat or wheat heavy sour beer, this one. You know, in Europe these beers get absolutely laced with oats and wheat, and that's really what gives them this almost kind of yogurty mouthfeel. But the wheat in this one is quite light and very smooth, and there's a wee bit of oatiness above that. So down the middle line of your tongue you get this wee bit of like oaty creaminess, and as you go out toward the edges of your palate it's just that little bit drier. But in the dead centre of your tongue there's a wee bit more of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note coming out of this one, and maybe just a very slight biscuity character. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of your palate with this one. But it's really that kind of vanilla spongy character that lingers into the aftertaste. So yeah, on the back third of the palate then, as I've often said, yeah, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities, but sweeter flavours will come out further forward on the palate. and dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. But let's focus on that back third of the palate. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit, there's a bit of a white bready base in there, then you get that kind of vanilla sponge out of it. And yeah, the base of the back third of your palate, the kind of bread crusty, wafery type layer, then yeah, you know, vanilla sponge type notes, a bit of a kind of, that layer feels a little bit lighter and more airy than the white bready character above that, and you can feel just a little bit of a wheaty dryness kind of coming out of this one as well. So yeah, that's quite nice. But above all of that, you're starting to get some of the yeasty character out of the beer, and the yeasty notes are quite interesting as well. So the yeasty side of the beer for me, it has a little bit of yeah, there's like a dense, there's almost like a dense, slightly sweeter brown bread in there, but then a lighter, more wholemeal bready character around that, and then it's a wee bit of like a white bready bread crust around the edge. But all of that sits above the malty side of the beer for sure. So yeah, the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer I think is really nice, but very much more. I've been focusing on that quite a lot in this beer. The malty yeasty side of things is it reminds me a little bit more of the Berliner Weisses that were going around Europe a couple of years back actually. But it's nice, it is very nice how all that goes together. The sort of vanilla sponge and kind of ice cream cone wafer type quality that this beer has is really, really nice. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, I think I'm wondering if what I said about there being hops in this beer earlier on is wrong, because it's very smooth on the edge of the palate there, so maybe it is just a bit of placebo. But I think there is a wee bit of an earthy herbal placebo effect on this one, and maybe a bit of a grassiness around the front curve of the tongue. But yeah, the fruity character in this beer really is suppressing everything else. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind with this beer. Yeah. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is really, really nice as well. So I think, you know, mainly, like I said, it's you know, the grapes are giving you the juiciness, and the cherries giving you the little bit of sharpness out of this one. You know, on that front third of your palate, as we often say, that's where the fruity character comes out of the beer. So that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, yeah, you can feel the sort of vanilla spongy character in the base, and then a wee bit of the kind of white bread above that. And the base of that front third of your palate, yeah, you've got the kind of bread crusty note in there, the kind of ice cream cone wafer, slight brown bready layer, then the white bready vanilla spongy layer, and then above that there's a wee bit of fruity note out of this one. So for me, there is a little bit of, you know, sultana and kind of like candied strawberry layer, which feels like it might come from the hop, but then it's all about the adjuncty fruit around that. So yeah, around the edges of your palate there, I think on the edges of the palate, when you first take the beer in, when we often talk about sour beers, it's kind of impact flavours that we need to talk about. So yeah, the impact flavours in these beers, this one comes in and it has a little bit of sharpness to it, which is obviously going to be from the cherry, but I think the edges of your palate at the start, it's all about the grape and the juiciness of the grape, and then the cherry sort of emanates from that a little bit later on. So that's quite interesting. But on the front third of your palate, let's just have a little look at that. Yeah, it's kind of doing opposite here. When they first take the beer in, you get a little bit of sharpness from the cherry, and then as you go further into the aftertaste, it's more about the kind of oiliness and juiciness of the grape. So yeah, like I say, the sides of your palate are doing the opposite. Grape in the beginning, cherry in the aftertaste. The front third of your palate, it's like, yeah, cherry in the beginning, grape in the aftertaste. So yeah, it's a really interesting blend of flavour, this one. But yeah, all in all, it's quite a juicy, kind of oily sour beer, this one. But rather than anything else, it reminds me of these Berliner Weisses that were going around Europe a couple of years ago. So coming back and trying something like this for me is a little bit nostalgic, but really, really nice. So I'll say thumbs up to Dankhouse Brewing for this. This is a really, really interesting sort of Berliner Weisse type beer for me. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour section. Let's just round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, mouthfeel wise, for me, this beer, I would say, you know, if I think about it in the Berliner Weisse context, it's mid-bodied, the carbonation is quite smooth, it's got a wee bit of an oily slickness to it, for sure. It's certainly, you know, if we think about it in the modern context, it's certainly not the kind of creamiest and thickest of fruited sours that I've come across. It's definitely not, it's not on a par mouthfeel wise with the kind of European ones or the one drop beers that I've had from Australia. It's not on that level. It is, like I say, a little bit more wetter and kind of Berliner Weisse like, rather than being fully smoothie sour in my mind. But regardless, as I say, I do like this one, but a bit more wet, a bit more drinkable. And when you think about the climate in America, that's kind of understandable. But then again, Sydney in Australia has that as well, where one drop are from. But yeah, IBU wise with this beer, I think it's probably technically 0 IBUs, but you know, there'll be 5 or 10 or something like that in here. The malt base, as we said, has a little bit of dryness underneath, but smoothness on top and a little bit of a more kind of creamy sweetness on top as well. A little bit of like oat creaminess and Werther's Original. We've mentioned the IBUs, and then the fruity side of this one is quite nice as well. You've got that little bit of impact from the cherry, but then the whole beer kind of mellows out and gives you more of the juiciness from the grape. But yeah, a bit of cherry lingering there on the side of the palate as well. So all in all, a really, really interesting beer, this one, and I really like how it goes together. So I need to try a few more from this brewery. I want to try one of the hazy IPAs and maybe a yellow sour rather than a more kind of like berry-like sour. Could be quite interesting as well. But yeah, very positive first impression of this brewery, and I certainly will return to them at some point in the future. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Stay Puft Grape Cherry, a 6% smoothie, modern, fruited, whatever we're going to call it, sour beer from Dankhouse Brewing Company in Newark, Ohio, over in the US. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dankhouse as well, and we will return to these guys again at some point in the near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next one. Ciao just now.